Hey folks, welcome to Nicely Done. Thanks for coming back. In a previous video, we worked on taking up some carpet padding, taking up some carpet, taking up the tack strips, as well as the staples that was on the floor. At the end of that, we also cleaned it up and made sure that it was prepped and ready to go for laminate flooring install. In this video, we're going to install those floorings. And so I want y'all to stick around so you can see exactly how we went about it, laying the floors, laying the underlayment, as well as putting down the quarter rounds and cutting them with a miter saw, as well as ways that you can do it without needing very advanced power tools. So if you stick around, you'll learn how to do that, as well as learn out how much it costs me to actually do it, as well as how much money I save. Going back where I left off in a previous video, I wanted to make sure that the space was clean. With that established, it was time to lay down the padded underlayment. Here I'm taking one of the planks to use as an edge to cut the underlayment. It worked out to be a good method that enabled me to make a fairly straight cut. Now here, I just want to show you the tongue and groove anatomy of these planks. This was a pretty standard design nowadays. Here is another angle. They go in pretty easily. You just have to place it in a groove, press down, and snap. For your last part of a run, measure the distance in a way that puts you close to the wall. Snapping a plank leaves it with an ugly edge that you could potentially get away with, but I wouldn't recommend it. As you can see, the plank is not a simple snap. One reason that this method is trash is because it's so labor intensive. Look at this crap. Taking the time to snap it off, you can see how bad the actual edge is. If you can live with it, cool, but there's a better way. Cutting it leaves a much nicer edge that is ready to install. To plan out your next course, you want to make sure that your planks are offset. When you have it, mark it and cut it. I tried to use a score mark to make precise cuts, but as you will see, it doesn't matter that much. Speed squares are not great for work surfaces. If I was to do this again, with a handsaw, I would set up a couple of workhorses and clamp the planks down. If you can set down all of your underlayment, go ahead and do it. But this stuff can move around when you walk in your workspace, so I decided to lay it down one course at a time. For this particular underlayment, there is an adhesive line under a plastic strip. When you take the strip out, you are to simply press your new underlayment edge on top of the adhesive. Here, I use the same method I used before to cut the underlayment. Once you have it firmly in place and taut, cut it. Double check your marks and cut. Once you got the juice on this, it becomes a rinse, wash, and repeat type of deal. I know you didn't ask for it, but here's a nice angle for your viewing pleasure. Alright, so measure, mark, cut, measure, mark, cut, 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 measure, mark, cut. Essentially, that's all you have to do here. Just remember those 3 words: measure, mark, cut. I found out that using my shop vacuum while cutting helps with a lot of the mess. Not to mention, it looks cool. This would have been a no-brainer from the gate, but I guess I just liked dust initially. Oh, and let's cut to a happy boy playing on the finished product. You'll see that at the end of the video. All right, folks, so pretty soon we're going to put the quarter rounds down. And so I'm about to show you how you can do that without using any really advanced tools. I'm going to use a hammer, a nail die, and nails. And we're going to be using finishing nails for the job. I also have a miter saw, but I'll show you a way that you can accomplish the cuts with this tool that you can get at your local hardware store if you don't have a power saw. Okay, to accomplish what we got today, I'm going to use this miter saw. This is a Craftsman miter saw. It doesn't have that articulating motion, but that's all right. You'll be able to accomplish this because quarter rounds are so tiny. Also, you're going to need a pen to mark where your cuts are. I'm going to use hammer and nails. And in here, there are 2 things that I use. These are dies. And so I'm initially start hammering, and you'll see me when I do that. But this makes it a nice finish so that when you go to put caulk on or to fill the holes, you don't have any hammer marks. And that's one thing that you won't have with a brad nailer. But if you didn't use one of these, you risk the case of, after you nail, making some scuffs and marks with the actual hammer. You don't want to do that. So I'll show you that in a quickie after I'm done with this initial setup. So if you can find this type of saw kit at your hardware store, it should be more than enough to accomplish the job. The only issue is that all of the cuts are preset. There is no dialing in specific angles. Here, we're setting the miter saw to establish the cuts that will be the seam of the other quarter rounds butted together. Use the miter to eye your cut. I'm not a fan of the precision of my miter saw, so I like to sneak up on my desired cuts. For each nail that you hammer in, you want to try and enter in at a 45-degree angle. You're either trying to get it to go through the baseboard or the subfloor. I elected to aim for the subfloor each time. Hammer away as best as you can with your hand being comfortable. Knocking it around like this can be quite awkward, quite uncomfortable, so just do your best. After you have the nail close to the quarter round wood, switch to the nail punch so that it can rest smoothly and slightly recessed. To make the next cut to keep the quarter rounds moving along, one easy way to measure is to take the end of the measuring tape and press it against the edge of the last miter. Then measure your length for your next miter. This measurement was around 1/14 and 1/8 of an inch. I wrote it down so I don't forget. Then I need to transfer it to the next workpiece. The thing about these quarter rounds is that they are hard to measure with a measuring tape due to their shape. When you prepare for the first cut or the second cut, try to make sure that the miter saw is to the left of the line that you want to cut. Otherwise, you can come up short. I like it. The way those come up together. I did want this a little tighter, but I could be happy with that. If you have a piece left over, use it. You do not want to waste any of your materials and find your way driving back to the hardware store. For this portion, I was able to simply start at the end of the wall because it was already flat. However, the spacing for each nail isn't determined as simply. So to determine the distance, I used my measuring tape to establish what the distance is and kept using it from nail to nail. It so happened to be for this case that every 4 lines was around 23 inches. Nailing, nailing, nailing. Yeah. Making sure it's nice and in there. I will assure you that the hole punch will always be your friend. Here is a measuring tip that you may have not heard before. Make a solid measurement on one end of the wall, let's say 10 inches. Then, mark a line on the surface. It won't matter here because a quarter round will cover it up. Then, measure from the other direction, read off that measurement where you made the previous mark, then add your 10 inches. Then cut your piece. Now it's time to cut another piece of round. If you have a well-calibrated miter saw, try using the laser guide. I just wish mine had a lock on it or something. So basically, I can trust this thing as far as I can throw it. And I'm no Jared Allen. Another nail into this piece in the corner and on to the next cut. With the other piece cut, you can see when positioned that there is an obvious gap that opens out towards the floor. To fix that, the cut needs to become steeper. And when I say steeper, I mean that the true cut is the complementary of the cut that we see on the miter saw. Instead of 45 degrees, I need something greater. Setting the miter saw, I begin to look for the angle that will close the gap. Make the cut. I think this will satisfy as a good corner. Now it's time to get to the rest of the wall. At this point, I'm butting an uncut end of a quarter round to the door frame. This will set the stage towards the last corner of the room. My decision was to start here first so I can establish the tightest fit. I will then work my way down the line. As I've been working through this project, I have been remembering some best practices. One I have in mind is using the punch to establish your nail position. Simply hit the nail punch where you want the nail to go, and then you lessen the chance of the nail slipping out when you initially hammer it. I know you've seen this before. This is where we measure again to establish the spacing between the nails. Nail and punch, nail and punch, nail and punch. Sometimes the nail can be a stubborn going down, so just be patient with it. It's going to be a lot of nailing, a lot of punching, but it ends. The final piece going in, I have a feeling it's going to be a beauty. Look at that. Nice and clean. So that's a wrap on this video. Please let me know what you think. So I told you at the beginning that I'll tell you how much everything costs and how much money I saved. All right, so let's talk about the first thing. Number one, I had 7 boxes of the laminate. Each box was around $19, so 7 times 19 was about $133. The underlayment, 100 square feet of that, cost around $44, all right? And then I had to worry about nails, but I already had some nails in the house, so you can pretty much scratch that one. In addition to that, we had to also buy the quarter rounds. Quarter rounds go about 8 feet for one section. Each of those 8 feet costs about $9.99. I needed 6 of those, so that put me around $56, $58. And so, all in total, I did all of this for less than $270. I think that I saved some money. I think I saved a lot of money actually, because if you think about it, if I was to pay someone to actually do this work, it would have cost me a whole lot. It would have been the materials plus the labor. So when you want to consider, if you want to save some money like me, think about doing it yourself. Maybe you'll save a lot. Maybe you save even more than I did. Until next time, please subscribe, like, and comment. This is nicely done. And I really think this project was nicely done.